All right, so this is our 5.3 notes, which is solving a system of linear equations, and this time by a method called elimination. There's some steps written here, and basically what you want to do is you want to have both of your equations in standard form, which means x's and y's on the same side, and then you're going to try to either look for opposites or create opposites. When you create them, that is through multiplication. All right, so let's just look at this first example. And the reason why we want to have them in standard form is, first off, you should be able to see here that when they're in standard form, my x's are lined up vertical of each other and my y's are lined up vertical. And after they're in standard form and your x's are lined up and your y's are lined up, first look and see if you have any opposites. When I say opposites, I mean like a +4 and a -4. And the reason why we want opposites is because we're going to turn this into some simple adding and subtracting, and then we want to eliminate or get rid of one of our variables. So if you look at this first question here, I have opposites with my y's. One's a +2, one's a -2. So if I split this up into three separate problems, like think of it this way, 3x and 3x gives me 6x. 2y minus 2y, they cancel and leave me with a 0. And then 4 minus 4 is also a 0. So what I'm left with is just 6x equals 0. So then when I solve for x by dividing both sides by 6, I get x equals 0. So there's one of my first parts of my solution. So 0 is for my x. And then what you do is you go back and use either equation, whichever one you think is easiest, to solve for your y. So what I might do is look at this top equation here and plug in 0 for x. So I'm going to say 3 times 0 plus 2y equals 4. 3 times 0 is just 0, so I'm left with 2y equals 4, and when I divide both sides by 2, I get y equals 2. So my solution is the point 0, comma 2. Now, what you'd want to do on a quiz or a test is go back and check and make sure that that actually works, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and look at example number 2. And when you look at example number 2, you can see that my x is already lined up, my y's are lined up, but there's no opposites. So I like to look at the smallest numbers first. Can you turn a -5, into the opposite of -10? So the opposite of -10 would be +10. So if I wanted to turn a -5 into a +10, I'd multiply this bottom equation, everything by a -2. Now if I look at my y's, can I turn a +3 into the opposite of -6, which is +6? And to do that, I would multiply by a +2. So I have two different options here, but I'm going to actually eliminate my y's because I can multiply by a positive number instead of a negative. I feel like that will lead to less mistakes. So what I would do here is I'm going to multiply both sides by a -2. I like to put on both sides so I don't forget. And then go ahead and do my distributive property, and I'm going to get a positive 20x and get a, oh, sorry, not a -2. What was I thinking? We talked about this can be a +2. So let me redo that real quick. All right, we want to do both sides by a +2. And that's going to give me a -20x. It's going to give me a positive 6y. It's going to give me a +2. So now I can look at my three separate parts of these equations. There's my x's, there's my y's, and then when I put these together, -5x and a -20x is a -25x, positive 6y and a -6y cancel, and then 23 and +2 is 25. So then when you divide both sides, you're going to get the x equals a -1. Now that I have that, I can take either equation, and I might do this top one here, plug in the -1. So I'm going to write down negative 10 times negative 1 plus 3y equals 1. And that's going to be 10 plus 3y equals 1. Subtract 10 from both sides, I get 3y equals negative 9. And we divide, you get y equals negative 3. So our answer is negative 1 comma negative 3. All right, so what I'm going to have you do right now is you can go ahead and pause the video and do these next three on your own. I will write down the solutions and then we will be done with our notes. All right, now that you've done those on your own, number one is going to be the 0.1 comma 2. Number two is 6 negative 6. And number three is 2 comma 5. All right, there you go. And if you have any questions, please reach out.